Okay. It is 5:33 p.m. And this is the November 15th, 2021 meeting of the Architectural Review Committee. Planning staff, please roll call.
Member Thompson?
Here.
Member Walsh has been excused. Member Paline doesn't appear to have joined us quite yet. Member McCoy?
Here.
Member Lockyer?
Here.
Member Dozy?
Present.
Vice Chair Rotman?
Here.
And Chair Jakeway is excused. We have a quorum.
Thank you. May we have a staff report on the posting of the agenda?
Vice Chair and committee members, our agenda was posted on Tuesday, November 9th, so our meeting has been posted in accordance with state law.
Okay, so the next item is revisions to the agenda. We are going to remove items 2 and 3 from the consent calendar.
Mr. Vice Chair, just to provide information to the rest of the Architectural Review Committee on why we're removing those items. Items 2 and 3 were noticed to the public, and so it's important that we offer the public an opportunity to speak on those items, and for that reason, we are pulling them from the agenda, from the consent agenda, and they'll be under your new business discussion.
Thank you. Do any other committee members have any other revisions to the agenda? If not, may we move to accept the agenda?
Move to accept the agenda as revised with number 2 and 3 under new business.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you. Since this is a public meeting, audience members are permitted to comment on any issue that's within the committee's purview. Comments on an item appearing on today's agenda are made at the time the item is presented. If you want to speak on an item not on today's agenda, you may speak now. Each speaker will have 3 minutes. David, do we have anybody in the queue?
No request to speak, Mr. Vice Chair, but I would open it up to anyone who is here at the meeting. If you'd like to speak, please unmute yourself and identify yourself, please.
Okay. If there's anyone who wants to comment on an item that's not in today's agenda, if so, come up to the microphone. I'm just repeating what he just said. So, all right. So now we'll proceed to the meeting minutes. The first one is from September 20th, 2021. Do we have any questions or revisions to that meeting agenda notes? I have one correction on page 5 under item 2A, about halfway down under right under no public comments. It says Vice Chair Roberts. Okay, any other corrections? And then we'll look at the meeting minutes from October 4th. Are there any corrections or changes to that? If not, is there a motion to accept?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes with a noted change.
Do I have a second?
Mr.
second.
Vice Chair, before we take a vote on that, if we also have on the consent calendar item number 4.
You're right.
We
Item
can
number
all of
4.
that together. If,
So let me read item number 4. DTPSB LLC owners for a minor architectural application to modify a storefront of the Block B building facade for Tequila Restaurant within the downtown Palm Springs specific plan located at 175 North Palm Canyon Drive. Okay, now do we have a motion to accept the consent calendar, which would include the 2 meeting minutes and item number 4.
I'll make that motion.
Have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Now we will go to item number 2, which is Liz Ostowich, owner, requesting a land use permit and a waiver to continue the use of an enlarged parklet located at 415 North Palm Canyon Drive. May we have a staff report?
Mr. Vice Chair and members of the Architectural Review Committee, before Ms. Perez begins her staff report on this particular item, I wanted to provide the members of the committee some general background on where we are relative to parklets. As you may be aware, we had 2 members of the Architectural Review Committee on a special subcommittee to assist in the development of parklet guidelines. Those members were Mr. Tom Dosey and Mr. Dan Thompson. And again, giving my appreciation to both of you for serving on that subcommittee so well as you did, for your input and your comments and your review and your assistance. So again, a shout out to both of you for your assistance with that. In terms of the recommendations of the subcommittee, the parklet design guidelines, which are included in your packet this evening, were adopted by the City Council on September the 9th. And so what now happens is any parklet owner who wishes to continue the parklet use into 2022 needs to go through the process of getting a land use permit approved. And so the first 2 applicants that you have on your agenda this evening from Tequila and from El Patron are the first 2 parklet applications that you have before you. Under the parklet guidelines, there are only 2 instances where the parklet will actually come before the Architectural Review Committee for approve, and that's where waivers are requested. The first type of waiver is where the parklet may extend past the limits of the business, and that is item number 2 that you have on the agenda, and that's where the adjacent property owner has given approval to do so. The second instance where you may have a parklet come before you is for a waiver where there's any type of a permanent shade structure or covering on the parklet. In the discussions that we had with the design guidelines work group, there were concerns about the fact that some type of a solid covering sometimes has the ability to block adjacent businesses. And so for that reason, we wanted to bring those types of applications before the Architectural Review Committee to review those impacts, and then also to give members of the public the opportunity to comment on such applications. So the first 2 applications that you have on the agenda tonight, the first one is for a parklet, a waiver for a parklet that extends past the limits of the business. And then the second one, item number 3, is for a parklet with a permanent covering. Any other parklets that submit for a land use permit, if they otherwise comply with the design guidelines, they will not need to come before the Architectural Review Committee, but rather will go through an administrative review process of staff. And we would also like to keep Mr. Thompson and Mr. Dosey engaged as consultants to staff in reviewing any parklets that conform with the design guidelines, just to make sure that we have input on design. As you'll notice from the guidelines, they are relatively flexible in terms of materials and colors and things like that. But for the most part, they maintain objective standards. So that's it relative to the design guidelines. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have about the guidelines before we get into item number 2 on the agenda. So if there's any general questions about parklets, I'll go ahead and take those now. Otherwise, I'll turn it over to Ms. Perez for the staff report on item number 2. So any questions generally? Not seeing any, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Ms. Perez and While we do have one of the applicants here, Liz Ostoich, who was also on our design guidelines committee. So thank you to Liz as well for serving the city in that capacity. So with that, Ms. Perez, I'll let you go ahead and present the item. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, let's see. Hold on one second. Can you see the, nope. It was better the other way, right?
Yes.
There we go. Okay. So the applicant Tequila is requesting a land use permit and a waiver to continue the use of a 436 square foot parklet to provide more areas for outdoor dining. The waiver is necessary because a portion of the parklet is extending past the business storefront towards the north. An approval from the neighboring business was submitted as part of this application. Here's the site plan that the applicant submitted. You can see the highlighted area in pink. That's the location that the parklet will be. And it is actually already an existing parklet. So the parklet conforms to all of the new city council guidelines as far as design, color, furniture, lighting, signage, the misting system, and the materials are concerned. Plant material is not proposed. The existing K-rail along North Palm Canyon is no longer necessary and has been removed. As you can see, it's no longer there. And a safety barrier, actually in the form of a K-rail, is located just behind that Tequila sign to provide safe, like a barrier for those sitting in the parklet and oncoming traffic. Staff does recommend approval as submitted for this parklet. And the applicant is available for any questions.
Thank you, Alex. Does the committee have any questions for staff? I'm not seeing everybody, so if you do, just shout. Okay.
Mr. Vice Chair, we might ask if there's any comments from members of the public on this item.
All right, I'll get to that. Thank you. If no questions for staff, then is the applicant present? Ms. Ostoich? Well, you have 10 minutes to make a presentation and 2 minutes of rebuttal if you desire after any public comments. When you start, please tell us your name and tell us about your project.
Sure. My name is Liz Ostoich, and my husband and I own Tequila Restaurant. And we're just so grateful to the city for the Parklet program and the ability to be able to have our use of that space for customers during the COVID period. When we first built the Parklet, we wanted to build it to a high design standard because we wanted it to be befitting of our brand and also of the city of Palm Springs. As part of that, we did go and have the adjacent property owner sign the application for the temporary LUP for the Parklet when it was originally proposed. And so that was on file from the very beginning. And I know some of the concern has been that maybe the adjacent property owners of other parklets weren't supportive of the parklets being in front of the business. But Michael Eisenstadt, who owns legal documents next to us, actually is a good friend of the business and really enjoys having the traffic and livelihood around his business there. So then now when we've gone through the Parklet design guidelines, one of the things we wanted to make sure of was that adjacent property owners were supportive if something did extend into that space. And so we went back to Michael, and Michael, as the business owner and then also the landlord that owns that building, have both signed a letter of support. The Parklet does not extend completely in front of that business. It angles in front of that business approximately 5 or 6 feet. And so it doesn't even block the business, but despite the fact that they are supportive. And one thing I did want to point out is that the extension that covers in front of that adjacent business is to the north, and traffic flows down, of course, to the south there on Palm Canyon. And so that extension in front of legal documents doesn't do anything to cause any kind of blockage of any businesses to the south or anything else to the north.
Okay, thank you. Is there any public comment? If so, please give us your name, and you have 3 minutes. David, do we have anyone?
Doesn't appear so, Mr. Vice Chair.
Okay, then we will conclude the public comment. And the members of the committee, do you have any questions for the applicant? It does not appear so. Okay, that will conclude that. The committee will discuss the project, and so does anyone have any comments they'd like to make?
I have a brief comment. As far as the parklets go, it's one of the best ones in town, and it should be kind of a template of how the standard should be set within the city. It's a very nice looking parklet. It's always kept up well, and I think it's done extremely well.
Thank you, Dan. I would agree.
Yes, I would concur.
Anyone else? If not, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the parklet as submitted.
And do we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
That's Tom Dozy. Thank you. Let's take a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you very much. We'll now move on to item number 3. Alex Gonzalez of El Patron Restaurant requesting a land use permit and a waiver for a shade structure on their existing parklet located at 101 South Palm Canyon Drive. Here we have a staff report.
Yes. The applicant is requesting a land use permit and a waiver to continue the use of an existing 320 square foot parklet along Tockwitz Canyon Way. Originally, during the COVID time last year, they had 2 parklets, one on Tockwitz Canyon Way and South Palm Canyon. Now they are just requesting West Palm Canyon Way parklet. There's also a request for approval of the existing shade structure per the City Council design guidelines. Oh, additionally, I'd like to add that the existing parklet along South Palm Canyon will be removed, as I had mentioned. So this is the parklet that will remain. This is the parklet along Tockwitz Canyon. The parklet conforms to most of the new City Council guidelines as far as design, color, furniture, lighting, and material are concerned. Signage, plant material, and a misting system is not proposed. They're not proposed with this application. The existing K-rail that you see where it reads tequila, tacos, music, and cervezas will no longer be required and will be conditioned to be removed. Staff would like to recommend approval subject to the following conditions. Modifying the existing platform deck so that it does not impede the flow of stormwater and drainage along the curb. Replace the existing shade structure with a non-flammable material per the design guidelines. Remove the existing key rails along Tockwitz and provide a safety barrier on the west side of the parklet to meet the design guidelines, and reduce the side of the parklet so that it does not encroach past the business storefront. As you can see, this is just a very early picture that was taken when the parklets were first going up. This area over here in front of Antigua, so the parklet does extend a little past. And if an approval letter from the business owner of Antigua is not obtained, the parklet will then need to be shortened. So that is only in front of its storefront. The applicant is available for any questions.
Thank you, Alex. Any members have questions for staff?
I have a question for Alex. So as part of this, with the removal of the K-rail, they will present a new sign program?
No, they don't necessarily need a sign.
Oh, so they may have no sign then along this village. Okay.
Along those lines, the tequila, tacos, music, cerveza, that is not approved. Is that correct?
Correct. So that is part of the K rail that exists now, and the K rails no longer are necessary, at least at that location. So they are part of the condition to be removed, and with it, the signage as well.
And Alex, can you describe exactly what the issue is with the drainage, how it's potentially impeding it?
Yeah, I don't have a photo of it, but I don't believe that there's any, it doesn't allow for flow of stormwater or drainage there. It's just built to curb. And maybe Alex Gonzalez can provide more clarification on that.
Okay, all right, great, thank you. Anybody else have questions for staff?
Just quick question. Yeah. Why is it, I'm just curious why the K rail is not required currently?
Maybe, well, not maybe. So when we talked to the engineer about this, they no longer required it. So it was discussed with the engineer. That is required on the west side of the parklet. As far as traffic goes, it goes west to east on that side. So they are requiring that as a safety barrier. A K-rail is an option, or some type of planter, or even wheel stops. Those are other options, but the K-rails are no longer necessary. And I think it also pertains to the aesthetic. They don't really look nice.
To give some additional background, in terms of the research that's been done relative to parklets, the lateral protection or the K-rail barriers that are parallel with the flow of traffic aren't necessary. Where we do find them necessary is perpendicular to traffic. And that's where there have been issues in terms of vehicles encroaching into the parklet. And so for that reason, the lateral or the parallel K-rail isn't required, but there is going to be one required on the west end of the parklet. And again, that's from the city engineer and the research that's been done on the topic.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions for staff?
I have one question.
Yeah.
The recommendation is to replace the umbrella fabric with a non-flammable, but isn't the code also say that they could treat that with a non-flammable coating rather than removing the whole thing and starting over?
If that is possible, then that would be acceptable.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? If not, is the applicant present? If so, please give us your name, tell us about your project. You have 10 minutes and 2 minutes of rebuttal if you desire after any public comment. Mr. Gonzalez?
There you go. Sorry about that. I was muted. Good
Thank you.
evening, everyone. How you doing?
Good.
First off, like Liz stated, thank you for, the city on allowing us to have these parklets. It's been huge in, getting seats and turning tables and allowing, more customers to come in and join us. So it's, we've all been going through this COVID thing, and it's definitely been a blessing. So again, we appreciate that. First off, yeah, I'm all for the conditions that are that Mrs. Perez stated. Getting rid of the K-rail is not an issue. I mean, I do see, that we were able to put some signage on it, but I would be all for adding some signage to my parklet if needed, whether it's on the side of the wood or we come up with something else. And thank you, Dan, for bringing up that topic of maybe treating the existing umbrella material. That is something I could look into. I've yet to see a product like that, but it's something to look into. It's already there, and it protects not only from the sun, but we're underneath those palm trees, which have a ton of droppings. And with, people eating food and stuff, it's been a problem in the past. And again, as Mrs. Perez stated, it does encroach into the Antigua patio about 5.5 feet. So that surpasses, I have gotten approval from the building owner, and he is going to reach out to the business owner below, which is Antigua. and try to get a verbal agreement or approval on that. So that's I know that's one thing we are waiting for. So as soon as I receive that, I can proceed on sending it to you guys. So if there's anything else, as far as the drainage, that's something we'll definitely have to install. I saw how Liz did it. You know, they basically made a void with the gutter, you know, the width of the gutter, which is a good idea. We were thinking something along the same, you know, we're in the building business, so I think we can come up with something that's sufficient and works and everybody can agree upon. Other than that, if anybody has any questions that I could answer.
Well, thank you. We'll get that to that. Is there any public comments? If so, state your name, and you have 2 minutes. And it does not appear we have any public comment. So at this point, does the committee have any questions for the applicant?
I'll ask a question. It looks to me like there's an opportunity, you know, in the photograph there near the front entrance, there's some large urns or pots with some landscape material. And I just am wondering why there's no proposal for similar type urns to be included with the parklet with some plant material.
Can I? Yeah, great. I think that's a good question, Tom, and it may be a question for staff also. And Dan, were there landscape minimum requirements for these in general when you had your subcommittee and created your guidelines?
No, there aren't landscape minimum requirements. If they choose to use landscaping, we do have a list of plant materials that are recommended, but landscaping is not required.
Was there a reason why? Maybe you had a specific reason why, Flynn, that you did not want to require it.
Because in looking at various designs from numerous cities, landscaping certainly enhances, but it's not necessary in terms of the aesthetics for the parklet structures. Some, as you can see with Tequila, where they use a decorative railing, is more than adequate to provide both protection and aesthetics for the enhancement of the parklet itself. So the design guidelines, while more or less objective in nature, do allow for a variety of different treatments.
Mm-hmm.
I think, Sean, one of the other issues was maintenance of the plant material and how to provide irrigation. I think in this situation, because of the nature of the restaurant, there's the opportunity to use some plant material that's indicative of, you know, the restaurant itself and bring the theme out to the street. Create a pattern of those urns could be attractive.
Yeah, sure. With some material that could be hand watered or something.
Right, right.
Was that a question for Mr. Gonzalez? If so, Mr. Gonzalez, do you want to respond?
Yeah, we're all for adding, you know, plant material that matches what we currently have. I mean, you probably know we have the round concrete cylinders with succulents, you know, all the way around our exterior patio, and that's definitely something we could bring into the parklet. You know, as far as, you know, I knew they weren't approved, so we've just never ventured into doing that. We always had the K-rail kind of surrounding it. But I am not against that, and we probably would do something along those lines, you know, to you know, tie it in with our existing patio.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant?
I just have one comment. Alex, just remember that you mentioned that you're going to get a verbal from Antigua. You need to have that in writing. It can't just be a verbal.
Yes, understood. Yeah, the owner is working on, the owner of the building is working on getting that for me. You know, Antigua is, you know, we're his neighbor, and, you know, respect him as a business owner. And I think that the building owner can probably reach out a little easier than we can. It is encroaching into his side patio, in which he stated he might be doing something with that in the future. But for the last 2.5 years, it's been stagnant, and then we've been maintaining it and cleaning it and picking up after, you know, everything that's going on inside of there. So we kind of treat it as our own, and you know, we'd love to not have to reduce the size of our parklet. So we're going to definitely work on that.
This is a question more for staff, but in the previous item, they had a letter also from the building owner, and that said that they were in agreement with having the parklet. Do we have on file that letter as well for this item?
We have an email from the property owner that gives permission to extend past the frontage.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? If not, thank you very much, Mr. Gonzalez. We will, the committee will have a discussion. Anybody?
Thank you, guys.
Anyone have a comment? Okay, anybody have a motion?
I'll make a motion for approval with the condition that they provide some additional planters and plant material that ties in with the rest of their patio and design theme.
I'll second.
Okay. May I add to that the staff recommendations about drainage and the flame retardant material also be added to that motion?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No, thank you very much. That concludes, this is the shortest ARC meeting we've ever had. That concludes our agenda. We are our new business. Do we have any committee member comments? No? Any staff member comments?
This will be the only meeting we have this month, so our next meeting won't be until December 7th, which is a Tuesday. So just so you're aware, not our normal day. We normally meet on Monday, as you all know. So it'll be a Tuesday, December 7th, and that will actually be the only meeting we have for the remainder of the year.
Great. Thank you very much. It is 6:06 p.m. and we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Happy
Thank you.
Thanksgiving, everyone.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Bye.